Recording in progress.
I'm not getting down, but you can hear me. That's me.
Is it working now?
No, that's evening.
Sorry about that, everyone. Thank you for your patience.
Sorry. Okay. I think we got it working. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he's done that.
I think so. Yeah, I've seen it heard on YouTube, so I think it's working. So I think it's working now.
Right, apologies for that. I think we're all hooked up and rolling again. So, Paul, apologies to cut you down in your prime.
That's all right.
A few minutes ago. Do please pick up where you left off.
Yeah. So thank you, Chair. So yeah, so this is sort of like an unfiltered list of areas that we identified, or the group identified, that they would like to look at, including some of the areas that Rob has already mentioned in terms of repainting, looking at. Oh, what's that? No, okay, sorry, I thought that was feedback. Looking at refurbishing areas, looking at things like welcome signs and general sort of keeping things clean and washed down. So that's where we got to. It was a very useful meeting. Lots of support, lots of positive thoughts about things that we could do and support. Excuse me. And so yeah, and we had local councillors there as well. So I think there was a lot of love in the room, it has to be said, in terms of the project and what it could potentially deliver. Things that, if you move on to the next slide for me, just one of the areas I mentioned, the River Street area. That's the area that I'm talking about. If you know it, there are 2 benches in there currently. Bottom right hand image is the current status of what was a wishing well. It hasn't been used for a wishing well, certainly in the last sort of 10, 15, maybe 20 years. So there's scope for either sort of removing that and creating maybe a plant or something. There's actually, it looks like this area was also designed to have a 3rd bench. So there's a potential to increase the amount of seating in that space. And also with this project as well, we have kindly been donated a sum of money via the Windsor Lions Club. Nationwide started a project at the beginning of the year to help fund and support pocket parks. And so this potentially is going to be part funded through that fund. So would really give us a good start. And there's a project that I know that the Windsor Ink Society have already started to work on, and talking to, I think it was Alison, about some of the work and building on that, but actually looking at the hard landscaping, getting that right, and making sure that that looks the best it can. So potentially by next spring, I'm hoping that this space will be transformed. Last slide, next slide, please, Lawrence. So for us, the next steps really is making sure that we catalogue all of the areas that all of the members of the group had highlighted. Can't promise to do every single one, but there are a lot, 95% of the projects that were identified, I think, were sort of, I'm not going to say quick wins, but there were things that I think the group felt that they could take on and change. I mentioned earlier on about storage points. That's going to be key. Robin mentioned about water butts. They are quite big pieces of kit, so we need to be able to store that somewhere safely and accessible for volunteers to use and get out, and make sure it's in the right. Unfortunately for us, I think Maidenhead's quite flat. Windsor, unfortunately, has a castle on a hill. So trying to drag a water butt up and down a hill may be slightly more challenging. But so again, it's going to be quite crucial to make sure we've identified the right storage points, and then we're not going to be going to cause us a problem, or those volunteers a problem, to try and move you know, a 2-ton water butt up a hill and then back down again. We've created a new sign-up form, so we've done a new drop form so that people can sign up to the project easily, and also identify if they are linked to other projects. So that's we've got that now, and we'll go live with that shortly. We're talking about creating a newsletter to make sure that we keep everybody up to date and informed about what projects there are and who's involved and what they need to do to get involved. Most importantly is identify a budget. As I said, we've got some money from the nationwide project, but potentially there is some additional resource, because there will be a requirement. We've mentioned wipes, we've mentioned graffiti kits, we've mentioned water butts. So those are resources that are going to obviously cost money, and we need to make sure that we've got the basic standard of stuff or kit that we need to make sure when we do get volunteers, they are resourced well and ensure their safety. Some stuff we've already got. We've got just literally in the storeroom around the corner, we have got litter pickers and gloves and bin bags. So you know, we can get started fairly quickly on stuff. And that's it really. That's where we are. So I'm hoping in the next month or so. Obviously we've got Christmas coming, but we've done quite a bit of work since September to try and make sure we're in the right place to hopefully replicate some of the good work that we've seen in Maidenhead. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Paul. That was very good to hear the update. Obviously, I was very pleased to attend the launch, and as you say, it was very positive. It was certainly looking to see what has kind of happened in the meantime. It would be really good to kind of get the ball rolling in terms of projects. Starting with be it that one or just a handful of kind of like readily accessible projects. Do share the sign up form. We'll be pleased to share that as well. And I think for me, there's clearly, like, Windsor is slightly different to Maidenhead, but there are common issues. I know we've got a lot of very good volunteer groups locally, and I think coordinating those will be key. And the management of projects. So, like, obviously some things in theory should be covered by the existing RBWM grounds maintenance contract. So an example that comes to the top of my head is the Dyson fountain in Alexandra Gardens. Is that part of the maintenance of Alexandra Gardens or not? It looks like it isn't, because it hasn't been touched for a while. So, can a volunteer group go in and do that? We need a way of being able to contact somebody in the council, get an answer, and just actually get things moving on that. And I think there's so many opportunities around Windsor. There's so much graffiti. There are so many weeds. Obviously, ideally, it would all be cleared up, but the reality at the moment is that we don't have the contracts and the resources in place for the council to do that. So, if we can activate volunteers, as I say, there are plenty of groups, and coordinating those, I think there's a good opportunity to make a very visual difference. Any comments? Any thoughts from the room? Yes.
Teresa Haggett, trustee of Windsor and Eton Society. I attended that meeting, and actually it started by a meeting between Alison Logan, a member of my H&EC committee, myself, Steph, and Chris Joyce. And we said that we do lots of things, but we can't do it all. And it started with that. But since the launch 2 months ago, I have heard nothing at all, not an email. And we were promised emails. Now, there were nearly 40 people there. And if those volunteers who came out that evening have not been contacted in any way, we have lost the momentum of that. And I feel very sad that that's happened. And also, we have been working on River Street car park, the garden there, for 2 years as a little group on our own. Alison turns up there. She's weeded, she's planted it with bulbs. The shrubs are all the things that she's put in. We fight with the refuse that's sitting in there, but we've done an awful lot. And we tried to get this going an awful lot more, and I feel very sad that, as I say, the momentum has disappeared. That it'll take a while. People who volunteered that night came out on that night and then have heard nothing, are possibly not going to come back and say, yeah, well, join in. We were all promised this email to say, the next steps or thanks for coming would have been nice. We'll keep you in mind. There's been nothing at all. And Windsor and Eton Society have worked really hard. We do Bachelor's Acre, we've planted bulbs, we've done the Remembrance Garden in Bachelor's Acre. And another thing that Alison then carries in her car, 6 cans of water on a daily basis to water the plants that we put in. We've worked tirelessly to do this, but we feel a bit that we are asked for more help on this. But we're still at the same situation. We had a group of our own members that turn up to that. We haven't made it go any further at the moment. So, it's not going to match up with Maidenhead's. We know that, but it should be Windsor's own bit, but there's nothing at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. No, I agree, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to put it on the agenda, because we've heard nothing. I don't know, Paul, if you want to come back on that.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I can only apologise. I do recall us talking about sending out an email, but I think we were, I suppose, trying to make sure we had everything in the right order, and we did the work before we sent out anything that we thought we, raise expectations beyond what we were trying to deliver. So I will make sure something goes out to those volunteers, because I think we did collect everybody's contact details from that evening. So we'll make sure that something comes out.
Sorry, can I just say it would have been just nice to have had a recognition of having turned up. That did not have to have anything about what plans were arranged, what's happening. And even you saying, well, we've done this one, we've done that one. You know, having been at that meeting and been part of that group that made the list of things that we wanted to see done, it's like still, you know, no notification that this is what we're doing. We've all been there willing to do more, but we're sitting in a little silos or not even doing anything anymore because we, you know, nobody got back to us to say, yes, please, we desperately would like your help.
On that, how is the day-to-day organisation actually going to work with this? Because as you say, a newsletter is fine, but how will people know this is a job that needs doing and be able to respond quickly and organise? Will we have a regular day like the Saturday that they have in Maidenhead? You know, how is it going to look? Otherwise, as you say, the momentum will just be lost. Volunteers will lose interest. And I know when we do our litter picks, we sort of try and have it as a regular event so people can get it in their diary and they know how to plan their time and just have it as part of the routine of their month.
I'm happy to comment. So from the experience that we've had in Maidenhead, it has evolved, definitely. We now have our regular Saturday once a month slot, and that's kind of it might have a title or it might not, but the town team are going to be meeting up and the meeting point is the yard at the town hall. So that's the odd jobs, and that's kind of people know that if they want to come down at 8:30 on Saturday morning for an hour and a half and finish with a cup of coffee in a coffee shop, then fantastic, they can come and do that. The way that Maidenhead has also evolved is that we've as the group has grown and changed, we've kind of identified a few key leaders, and I suppose that they've kind of almost stemmed from community groups that are already established, much like you guys. You know, you're already established and you've got the drive to do the work. Now from that, we've transferred our work jobs to a meetup, which is used by a lot of the local voluntary organisations, and we put our volunteering sessions on meetup so that people can just say, oh yeah, one click, I'm coming. And that includes the meeting point, the times, a one-line description of what the job is and whether or not, to dress for mess, that kind of thing. Those meetup sessions are quite, more often than not, thought up and then led by the smaller group of community leaders which we have within the wider town team. We also have people that drop me an email and say, any chance I can get into the garage? I'm off work today and I want to go and do a litter pick. And that's kind of grown as we've done stuff. But the structured side of it, having that once a month session, which is kind of the meeting point, you go out, it's very structured, it's an hour and a half and you're going to do your job. Then you've got the jobs which maybe you're identifying when you're out there in the community and they go on to meet up. And then as you kind of have that further established group, that's when it becomes a little bit more, you've got people that are just actively volunteering at all times within your community. Yeah, so it does take a little bit of time to grow that, and the structured start of it is a really good thing. When we started in Maidenhead, we specifically started with a launch project. So we did planting, we did clean up, then planting on 2 specific weekends, and then we introduced the monthly slot. And having that, like you said, it's in the diary. If you can make it, fantastic. If you can't make it that month, it's going to be there next month.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Jim O'Shea, just resident. A few things, really. First off, well done to the volunteers. It's great that people do it, but I'm just a bit bemused that it doesn't seem like you're right. There's people like John Davey who are out all the time doing loads of stuff in the community and putting community groups together. There's people that work with the corporates in the area to do litter picks and all that kind of stuff. It seems like the most obvious is to see what it doesn't. It seems like people are still working not in a consistent manner, and unless you do that, then it's just a load of different volunteers that were doing it already, just under a new branding, which sounds very much like stealing their thunder to me. I think you really need to assess what it is that makes having just a different name for what people are doing, and the only way you can do that is assess what everyone can bring to the party first before you start dishing out jobs. Secondly, and for the umpteenth time in this meeting, Windsor Town Forum is not Pescott Street and the High Street. Twice in Paul's presentation, it talks about the town centre. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in Clewer, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in Dedworth, there's a lot of planters in Dedworth, etc., etc., etc. You're not going to get the whole of the town involved if it's constantly cleaning the Queen Victoria statue, right? There's more to Windsor than that. And the last thing is, well done for doing it, but it really is in residents' job to clean graffiti and to cut down nettles and fundamentally do the job of the company that we pay as residents to do the gardening and clean the streets and so on and so forth. It's great that people are prepared to do it, but I don't know how much we're getting back as residents via some sort of forfeit for us having to go around and do jobs that aren't being done by the companies we employ to do that work. So, you know, I just think it needs a proper look at it. It's great that there are residents out there doing it, but residents should not be a resource covering up for gaps in things that RBWM are paying companies to do. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jim. Just to pick up a few of those points, I was going to emphasise the point that this is about the whole of Windsor, so the unparished. So geographically, it's defined as the unparished area of Windsor. Sorry,
that would include Dedworth, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So it extends right up to basically where Bray comes into the ward of Clewer and Dedworth West.
Okay, so if you were listening to that presentation, where would you think we were focusing the work of the volunteers?
As I say, I was in my mind, and I was going to make that point, put it written down here.
Cool.
That this is the whole of Windsor, and it extends very much up Dedworth Road. You know, pretty much to Tinker's Lane. Exactly where it ends, I don't know, but basically the whole of Windsor town, the unparished area, would be the geographical definition. And in terms of, obviously, there are a lot of volunteer groups doing things, and I think you're right in terms of needing to effectively do like a gap analysis at the moment as to where the town team can really add value. I think for me, there's a coordination piece, and then there's like essentially where are the gaps at the moment, so where are things not getting done, and that's where effectively new volunteers could be directed or new pieces could be directed. So it's absolutely not to steal anyone's thunder, and you know, all credit continues to go to all the groups that are doing you know, the work on site. In terms of the existing contracts are in pretty bad shape, and a lot of them don't have any mechanisms to. They don't have the detail and definitions of things and the mechanisms to enforce them. So we've had a lot of challenges, in particular the grounds maintenance contract. The current contract is up in September 26, and the procurement process has commenced. I'm part of that. Leading that for corporate services includes procurement. So there's a group of councillors and officers kicking that process off. There will be a lot of resident engagement, community group engagement around what that is, and hopefully that contract in due course will be considerably better, and we will know what is and what is not in scope precisely, you know, and everything like that.
If I could suggest then, and you've got at least 15 pictures then of things that need to go into the scope. You know,
yeah. There's all yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's obviously also the challenge of a finite budget to manage an amount of work as well.
Just as an example, I mean, I would see it working in the way that we do with the Friend Hospital Cemetery, with the group that looks after the cemetery there. We agreed before we started with the cemetery's manager what we would do, and we identified what Tivoli do, and we don't do their job. What we do are the things that are over and above, where there are people, we litter pick, and we do tidying and caring for graves where there's nobody caring for them, you know, particularly the older ones, sort of clearing them of ivy and things like that, which is not particularly Tivoli do, sort of cutting down the big overgrown shrubs, and they do the grass trimming, and they do the sort of heavier work. We don't do that. We do the things that just give it a bit of TLC, a bit of love and care, and the things that are sort over and above, and that's very complimentary. So I think there's room in other spaces as well for doing stuff that's over and above.
Polishing up, I think, exactly right. I think that's fine. But when it comes to things like we can't walk down this alleyway because there's stinging nettles, that's not polishing up, right? And I think Spittle, I think, is great. It's been done really well recently. But I think it was 2 years or 18 months or something where there wasn't a cemetery manager, and there's been problems with getting any of the kind of organizational management team that look after greenery and so on. And I mean, we all know this, so I'm not going to repeat it, but there's no point having just a group of people going out and solving the problem if there's a better way of ensuring that the problem is solved at source, is my point, I guess.
I think we did have a year after Mike Jones, who was fantastic, retired. We did have a year with no cemeteries manager, but we've had Paul Prescott since last year, and he is absolutely fantastic. Can't praise him highly enough. He's got things working really well with the cemeteries. So I think, yeah, it's absolutely everybody needs to be playing. We need everybody in place and playing their part, ideally.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Neil Bailey, President. I was about to come in before Karen spoke to first of all say that her group is an exemplar of what should happen with the group. It's very good. But there's one thing that Karen does and her group does, which I think is really important above what you actually do in the cemetery, is you, on that Facebook group, you put up what you've done after you've done it. So even the people who weren't contributing, they can see what you've done. And people like me that probably should attend more of that did something, oh yeah, look what they've done, and it brings people together and thinks, look, they made a really good job. There's 4 of those people turned up today. Look what they've done. I must make sure I go next time. And I think communicating back what you do to encourage others to join is really good. And I think you do a tremendous job with that group, but it's all about communication, because people, if they're not going straight away, they'll soon forget.
Thank you. I think it's a very valid point. I know that Alison reports back on the work that she does very clearly. The Wild Windsor group, when they do, I know they did something recently in Trinity Wildlife Gardens, they report back. I think that's an excellent point. I mean, certainly there's a point coming up about communication. We obviously, there's an action to get an initial communication out and some guidance as to the sort of the plan about how we start to engage with the sign up form. And an outline of how we see it working to kick that off. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Just a quick follow-up on that. It's not just reporting back. The reason that your group is so successful is it's got pictures, a bit like before and after. You got a picture of the muddy people and muddy wellies who've done it, and you show what mess it was beforehand and what it's like now, and that encourages others. And I think that's much, much better than reading a couple of lines on an email.
Yes, sorry, by reporting back, I was effectively covering in my mind at least the before and after pictures, but thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, the before and after is very much a very visual and clear representation. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, Ian Haggard. Yes, sir. We were part of the Bachelor's Acre clear up a few weeks ago, picked up the etc. We did also report back a lot of graffiti. Interestingly, I got the report back from the borough within 20 minutes saying they've all been cleared. Got from the reporting system. I thought, marvellous. Perhaps someone's been there between the two doing that. So surprisingly, our request, or the request of you, is to try and make sure that if it is reported back, at least say there's an issue to deal with, or it's not going to be dealt with, but just to close it 20 minutes later was very surprising.
I happened to have some experience of that as well, and I think that there might have been a new member of staff in customer services or something that was pressing the wrong button, and by having referred it on to the team to do it, had inadvertently sent the message that something had been done. Although I did have an amazing response last Friday lunchtime. I reported a bin that was overflowing that needed emptying, and the very dirty pavement all around it, and got a very speedy reply back to say that it had been done. And I thought, oh, that's that same problem again. And then the resident that reported it to me actually emailed me and said, oh, it's been done. So I was absolutely astonished that on that instance it had actually happened straight away. But yeah, I think there was a specific instance for a week or two with a problem around that, which hopefully has been rectified.
Thank you for that, explaining why I was so quick on there. Just to follow up on that, certainly some areas, certainly like Church Street in the Heritage Garden, they look after. There's repeated rubbish dumped there in the corner. There are no bins there for the residents. So if it's flats 2 and 3 number, which they will quite often leave their paperwork out. So when we do report that back in, we try and include evidence of what it is. But that's a continual problem on there. I know Paul's aware of it for that, and I'm sure it's an uphill battle. So thank you.
I think it's just worth saying that with graffiti, unfortunately, I've been reporting graffiti, but the response at the moment has been there is no budget to remove graffiti. So going back to what you were saying about it would be great if the borough were doing this, it absolutely would. But if there has, you know, if the budgets for these things have either been removed or they've run out and there is no money to do it, I would rather put my wellies on, put my gloves on and roll my sleeves up and do it, because the trouble with this graffiti is you get a little bit, you get a bit more, you get a bit more, and then it reaches the point where people don't care for the area because it looks run down, and then it's that broken window theory, isn't it? So yes, I would love to be able to report it and have an army of people going out and doing it, but without that currently, happy to have a go myself. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more points or questions or thoughts? Okay, well, with that, if we can move on to Lawrence, do we know if we've got Chris online at all?
No, it's not online.
No, okay. If we can move on then to Paul, your town manager update.
Okay, hopefully Lawrence has got my presentation. I'll try and get through this fairly quickly. If we go to the next slide, please, Lawrence. So footfall count for central Windsor. So this covers all of the key areas, all the key training spots. The Riverside, there's this collective list of footfall. Only slightly up on previous results with 1.3 million visits in October. Year-to-date figures currently stands at 13.9 million visits, which is 12% up on the year. I know we discussed this in the past because a number of, certainly I've got businesses and others that say, why is this so high? And as we've said in the past, that the new system that we're using, you know, gathers in a lot more information. So it does identify far more people than the static system that we still do have in Pesca Street, and it's used in some of the shopping centres, whereas this is more holistic and gathers more information. So this doesn't quite match up with sales in the town, we know that. But as we go through to the next slide, you'll see some of the trends that are now starting to appear. So on the next slide, you've got at the top left there is Pesca Street, down 4%. And so we have seen over the last 3 months a decrease in footfall, and that does reflect more realistically what certainly traders are reporting back in terms of sales and a general sense that the town is quieter. We've also had feedback from Windsor Castle that equally October has been very quiet for them, and November is shaping up very similarly in that respect. Year-to-date figures for Pesca Street, 4.3 million, which shows that it's still up on the year, but obviously as we go into Christmas, which we consider our best period, not brilliant, but we had some very good events in November, and hopefully that may change for the November stats. St Leonard's Road always seems to perform above most areas in terms of the trading space, mainly because I think most of our residential populace live in and around St Leonard's Road, and it is the main walk through into Pesca Street, so that's currently up by 3%. Next slide, please. Riverside, as I've said, this always tends to be slightly higher than all the different areas because mainly we have a lot of leisure visitors, so they could be walkers, dog walkers, runners, So down by the riverside, it's always been fairly positive. 8.9 million visits year to date, up 22% on the same period last year. Next slide, please. Retail vacancy rates. Now we've seen our vacancy rate slightly go up this year. We lost a number of units. I've named some of them there: Copy, Gallery, Bandiani, Phase 8, Chat Time, and Art Deco Antiques. Whilst we've lost a few, some of those, so where we've got Phase 8, they will be being replaced by Miniso, who will be coming in there at the end of November. We also have Windsor, not Windsor Road, it's called Windsor Souvenir Shop, that will be going into the old Bandiani unit as well. So hopefully we'll see that vacancy rate come back down. It's currently, it's currently at 10%. It was at 9% last month, so I do expect that to come down for November as we see those other units open up and replace the ones that I've just mentioned. And other retailers we know that are currently preparing to open. We've got Satchel in Windsor Royal Station, and we've also got Windsor Royal Jewellery, who are about to open in the old Headcase unit on the High Street. So we do have a number of new units coming forward. So I expect in December that number will come down. Dedworth has remained unchanged since we last spoke. Has a very good vacancy rate, 1.5%, on against the national average, which is about 13.9%, as it says at the top there. Next slide, please. Car parking. Since we last reported on car parking, it has gone down again, -4%. I'm sorry, that says July at the top. This is October's details. I've managed to put that in by accident, but these are definitely October tables. The only sort of car parks that really, Victoria Street seems to be performing again, third month in a row, seems to be performing above average on last year's figures, as has Alexandra Gardens. The Coach Park, which normally we expect to see trade, as I've said earlier, we seem to have a downtick in visitor numbers to the castle, and that's obviously reflected in the Coach Park figures for October. But that's where we are with car parking usage. Next slide, please. We need to probably go on 2, please, Lawrence, for that. Thank you. Just in terms of activities, events that have taken place recently, we held our annual pumpkin party in Windsor Royal on the 26th of October. Over 220 families attended that, and the return of Mr. Marvel there, you see on the middle image there. Windsor favourite, hundreds came to his shows. He had about 4 shows that day. We also held a week-long pumpkin trail hunt across the town centre for the day, and very well attended and very well supported, thanks to our local fruit and veg man, Anthony Reynolds, who provided over 250 pumpkins for us on the day. So a well attended and well enjoyed event. Next slide, please. Moving into Christmas, hopefully, the first thing I would say is we launched a Christmas programme. If you haven't already picked up one of these lovely brochures, please do. I've got some copies here. Designed again by a local designer, and far more comprehensive than last year. I think I said that last year, that it's really comprehensive, but it is really comprehensive this year. We managed to fit in a lot more information, so the visitor marketing team coordinated the delivery of that. So that was great. Image on the left is the Windsor on Ice. They currently are standing, I think they've had just under 3,000 visitors so far. They're aiming to have in the region of about 18,000 visitors by the end of January, or by the time they finish in January. The next image along is an image from the Windsor Switch On. I think that's the Rhodes Dance School, just in front of Queen Vic's statue on the tree. Again, phenomenal turnout there. We saw probably in the region of about 5,000 or 6,000 people throughout the evening, all throughout the day and into the evening. We had a number of issues with this event last year. It was actually so busy last year, but we made a number of amendments to make sure that visitor safety was paramount, and we made some changes to how we directed crowds into and out of that space at switch on time at 5:30. And the next image you'll see is of the Eton light switch on. Again, very well attended, probably in the region of about 2,000 people attended that event. Always a very good event, and supported very well by the community stalls and children's rides. The last image is again of Eton switch on just prior to the lights coming on. I always manage to forget to take a picture of once the lights have gone on. I don't know why I do that, but it's the peak. So far we've had a very good range of events in the start of Christmas. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I added that one in because I thought I was talking about our team prior to the changing the agenda. That's just a list of future events that are coming up, some of which hopefully you have all seen. Those first three are really the Windsor illuminations, which started on the 15th, Windsor on Ice I've just mentioned, and the castle illuminations as well. I've added a few more bits to this since September because I think we hadn't quite confirmed all of the detail. So I will, once I've amended the date change on this slide, I will share it with Lawrence to share out to people. So that gives you the vast majority of activities and events that are taking place in Windsor and some in Eton. I won't go through all of them, but pick up the programme because it is all in the programme and more because it covers the whole of the borough. And that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any questions on the presentation or for Paul? Yes. Would you mind coming to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Good evening, John Bowden, resident Central Windsor. Paul, good evening again. Can I just ask you, the last, what was supposed to be the Christmas market was postponed last weekend and it's now moved to the 7th of 8th. Can we have some kind of urgent advertising? Because a lot of people were confused because of the weather, right? And they've got the next slot, which is 7th and 8th. So can we have some Facebook or next door advertising just to ensure even the people that are visiting?
Yes, I completely missed that from my presentation. So in terms of yes, I know. Storm Bert. We were advised of Storm Bert, beginning of last week. And yeah, the decision was taken as for a number of events actually were cancelled or postponed. So we took the decision we could move the Christmas market to the 7th and 8th of December, which is what we're doing. I had hoped that Natalie, who is coordinating that, was going to update all the posters. In fact, she told me she was going to update all the posters that are currently residing in and around the town centre. I know that we've sent out that information to our social media team, so I will go back and repeat that goes back out again. But I know that, yeah, we had a number of different activities across the whole of the borough, unfortunately, that were either cancelled, changed or postponed, and that was one of them.
Yeah. I was going to comment on the posters as well, because I've seen a few, so thank you for make sure we get those updated. Thank you.
Can I continue? Sorry, can I continue on the markets, Paul? What's the current position with what I would call the street food market in Pescod Street? Is that active or has it been withdrawn?
Currently, that's been suspended upon review. We suspended it back in, it was September was the last day that the market was on. So currently reviewing that and looking, there are a number of issues that we had that I can't really go into in this forum, but yeah, so we are looking at whether or not we can reformat that in some way or look at a different type of market.
Yeah, because my comments, and I think listening to other people and some of the major shopkeepers there, was the odour or the smell from it, which was going into the different shops, and also some of them had music with it as well. and also the blocking of the window displays with the canopies that are there. So it seemed to have got untidy recently. And the other one was what I would call the farmers market. Some suggestion on social media that can they return and to where? That's the one that's been in about 3 or 4 different sites in my time around Windsor.
Yes, we've been trying to communicate with, it's the Thames Valley Farmers Market Cooperative that operate the farmers market. And yes, earlier on in the year, the main supervisor that used to manage it, unfortunately left, and I think that's been a problem for them. We have offered them alternative sites. We did offer them Pesca Street. Unfortunately, with Pesca Street, there are restrictions. One of those restrictions are that they have to operate until 5 o'clock because that's when the road reopens. And the farmers market currently only operates till 1 o'clock. And so they felt that that was too big an ask to allow to ask their traders to trade on till then. We have looked at an alternative position at St Leonard's Road, and we're still waiting to hear back from them as to whether or not that is an option. So yeah, Bachelor's Acre at the moment, unfortunately, the last time I visited, they had about 6 stalls. So clearly that, you know, they need to do some work on how they get traders back there. When we first moved it to Bachelor's Acre, we were having 19, 20, 23 stalls. So clearly there's something that's gone wrong there with how they are marketing that to traders. So we are talking to them and trying to find an alternative, if that is indeed still Bachelor's Acre or alternative site. But as soon as we have a decision on that, we can let everybody know.
One question, if you accept it. 5 o'clock and Saturday, the large lorry that comes down, probably sometimes a little bit earlier than necessary, but around about 5 o'clock. The current markets, especially the one craft markets, etc., the stalls were still up, but this, I would say, 16-ton lorry was coming down. None of the cars were able to move because they still had their kit on there, and then it blocked the road completely, not the road, Petticoat Street completely, while it unloaded, and there was a log jam there. I was there on foot, and I know that lorry comes down like clockwork. And it's to use the expression, and I don't care, every little helps, that should come down later. It is a massive lorry, and it does more damage to the footway than anything else, and the bollards, allegedly. Can we deal with that vehicle, please?
Yeah, sorry, could I just clarify, what day was this you saw this truck?
On Saturday, every Saturday.
Right.
Because whoever wants to cycle down there at that time, they won't have any space because of that truck that is positioned outside.
So what I would say on that is we have done some work with, I won't mention the name of the shop, but in terms of making sure they know when the markets are on, because we've had this issue in the past, and we've said, if we let you know the date of the market, then ideally you can retime your deliveries. So that's what we've generally done. But I appreciate that, yeah, sometimes deliveries can go out of sync, or drivers forget that there are market days in Windsor Town Centre. But generally speaking, we've tried to make sure that they know the dates and that they expect that there potentially is going to be a problem for them if they take a large lorry down there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. They're very much noted, especially that latter one, which is of some concern. Obviously, just a reminder that there is no cycling on Pescod Street, so that won't be a factor. But for pedestrians, certainly, prevalence of lorries and vehicles or whatever, and as you say, the damage to property. So that's very much noted. The market issue, that is something that's very high on our agenda. Can't actually, not appropriate to say any more at this point, but that is something we're continually working on.
Devon Davis, one of the councillors here. 3 months in a row of lower footfall. Is this comparable to similar towns or unique to Windsor?
So in terms of footfall generally across the country, there has been a general downturn in footfall across the whole of the country, in various levels. But so yeah, this is not uncommon. And we'd normally October you'd see, so after the summer holidays you'd normally see a downturn anyway from us. But it's certainly lower than we would expect it to be, given last year's results, which equally were in the minus, but not as high. They were sort of 1%, whereas we're looking at sort of 4-5%. Pesca Street potentially, if you look at talking to some of the traders, they feel it's more 10% to 12%, depending on where you're taking your count from. But yeah, so it's not it's not something that's completely out of kilter with the rest of the country.
I think it's really interesting because we're seeing good footfall in other parts of the town. So Leonard's Road, and you said, you know, it's always good there. Well, I would argue that actually now there's some really lovely businesses down there that are attracting people in, and you know, there's lots to appeal down there. And then the river as well. So it is interesting now we've got this system. We can be a bit more targeted and see how people are visiting and using the town. Yeah. And you know, is it that high streets are just not? They don't have the same draw as they used to for people. You know, it's really interesting. And I think there's a bit more. I think there's a bit more that could be done into really delving into it to see what's exactly going on.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think I would agree. I think it is encouraging to see St Leonard's Road up year on year, and obviously we're looking at year on year figures by month. So the seasonal trends effectively are sort of not a factor. And yeah, completely echo the point about the St Leonard's Road sort of shopping village and the independent shops there, and you know that is it's good to see that thriving.
I'm just going to say that if they've got any changes to things like the market, then making sure it goes on the residents' newsletter, because if that's not updated, you know, a banner bit that says it's now moved to this, because there's a long list of things, and you know, by the time you sort of read through them, there's nothing that sort of necessarily jumps out at you. If something like that is happening, you know, that sort of section of it is a bit boring. Needs, you know, you have to sort of trawl through treacle to find something, whereas it would be really good if there was sort of a bit more oomph to that bit about what's going on in the town. Sorry.
Yes, point well made. That's not lost on us by a large degree. Yeah, with all these things, when we get, you know, the events in place, the communications piece is very important to get out to residents on as many different platforms as possible. Thank you.
Just a very quick point. You talked about the coach park being down a little bit. The coach that we all complained about last time that the park talked at the tennis club, we spoke with the police when they were here last time as well, or whenever they were here last. I mean, I've driven past that at least 3 times and honked at it. It doesn't seem to be changing its attitude at all. The buses that are parked by the leisure centre for what I'm assuming is full of kids having hour-long swimming lessons are not. They're still there every day. It doesn't seem that anything has changed really in terms of that, and I don't know how long one is meant to give the police to spot something that we've spotted every day when we drive past it. But it doesn't seem like they're moving people on, and I assume that's all revenue that we're missing, or that the coach park is missing at least. So you know, maybe someone wants to have another word in someone's ear and just say it's there, you know.
Yeah, I'm aware that the parking manager wrote to the coach company, so it might be worth as an action just chasing up what response he had and then getting him to do more.
But does it need to be written up? Isn't it just a parking ticket? I mean, if you just give them a parking ticket for 60 quid for parking effectively on a dual carriageway for an hour, I'm sure they'd get the hit quicker than letters back and forth for 6 months.
Yeah, but he also manages the enforcement team, so can direct them in that.
I mean, I've never got a letter saying you're parking illegally. Would you want to chat about it? Right? So,
Also, sorry, Chair, I was just going to say, I'm not quite sure of the status of that. I know you said it's dual carriageway, it's a slip road that takes you to the tennis courts. I'm not sure if are there double yellow lines on that road? Because if there aren't, then the enforcement team can't enforce. But I might be wrong on that, but I remember after it was discussed, I remember driving down and seeing a coach there and thought, yeah, there's no double yellow line there, so I don't know if we can.
Apparently, thank you, because it's in. I didn't realise that was a tennis court. It was those tennis courts we were talking about. Yeah, those tennis courts. That is a clear way, apparently. Imperial Road and the slipway are apparently clear way, so it doesn't need to have double yellow lines for them to enforce there. And we spent quite a lot of time reporting that to parking, but apparently, according to the parking principle, they don't need double yellows to enforce.
Thank you. Thank you. Lawrence, if we can pick that up as an action, just to ask the parking principal for a written update for the next meeting, that would be great. Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir.
Just a really quick one. I'll take the point about the residents' newsletter. I was going to raise the fact that the current one hadn't been proofread very well because this meeting isn't taking place tonight. It took place on the 14th of November and it's not taking place here. It's taking in the town, the town hall in St Ives Road. I had two queries about that.
Thank you. No, I did spot that at the moment it came out. Unfortunately, it was obviously too late by the time it had come out. And I did feed that back to the communications team and they have reviewed their processes to add an extra level of review to make sure that doesn't happen again. Apologies. We did I think redouble efforts to share the details for this meeting separately, but I appreciate that was yeah, clearly a mistake. Thank you. Any other comments on?
Just whilst we're talking about events, I've seen quite a lot of reminders on Facebook from Visit Windsor about the market being moved to the 7th and 8th. So I think that the message is going out on Facebook about that. Also must mention the Clure and Edwards Christmas Fair, which was also cancelled on Sunday due to the storm and is going to be held this Sunday coming, Sunday the 1st of December, 1 till 4 at the Pirate Park. Not to be missed.
Thank you, Karen. Well done. Any other questions for Paul? Okay, thank you. Do we know if Chris Joyce is able to join us now? I know he was on a little bit of a time schedule.
It's not online, so I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah. So it may be that we have to pick up the Heathrow Airport and the aviation forum update at the next meeting. Just, I guess, on that subject, we can move on to the next agenda item and the issues for future forums. So I guess effectively an open item for any issues. Just in terms of context, just worth referring briefly to the forward plan. So what we have on the plan at the moment, so for January, we've got the periodic Thames Valley Police update, a development from the Windsor Royal Development Team, and Paul's update. Then, in terms of items to be scheduled, the Windsor and Eton Pride, the Town Council update, the youth provision, which may either be January or March, and then a leisure provision update and a Vision for Windsor update. So those are those kind of in the pipeline. Very happy to throw it open now to the room for any other issues. Yeah.
So I've hit a dotting mark, apologies.
Yeah.
But just things for the future that I sort of scrolled down during the month, right? Jack Douglas gave a really interesting non-answer to the Windsor Wheel in, I think it was council, or maybe it was one of the meetings, one of the bigger meetings. So where does that 40 grand go and what do Windsor see out of it? And I've never seen it busy, but he seemed to think that it was like, you know, like a Beatles concert. And I'm curious where that misalignment is. Both the lifts that have been discussed ad nauseum on Facebook, I don't know if that needs an update in the future. And sorry, Mark, the bike shed of doom. Just if there might be a possibility. I'm sorry, I just drive past it quite regularly, I know there's been problems, but is there an update on when that will, if it's being used? Or that's my point. So.
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the Windsor wheel, did you talk about that? I know there's been one or two sort of posts. There was a flat fee of 40,000 received by the borough, so that's obviously gone into the borough's coffers, so to speak. As I understand it, we're essentially waiting to see whether they want to run it again next year or not. I think it was. We don't have visitor numbers, so I can't actually comment beyond that. But it would effectively depend on the operator as to whether they wanted to come back and apply for planning permission again. The planning permission was granted temporarily for one season, so in that sense, it's kind of pending at the moment.
Would we then get a chance to ask the residents as well if they want it again?
There would obviously be so if it goes, if the operator wants to operate it, then it would go to planning. And the normal planning process would apply where residents can feed in, to that. I don't know if it's obliged to come to panel, probably is, isn't it? Yes, it will come to panel. So there will be a similar process to this year if that was to happen. I know comments have been passed on regarding the appearance of the sort of the base area and the fence, and the sort of the signage where it could potentially be made more attractive. Certainly, I passed it on a number of occasions, and it did not seem to be busy. So, echo your comment. So, awaiting the numbers. Yeah, Amy.
Thank you. I happened to meet the people that ran it at Windsor on Ice the other evening, and they said they did have a fairly shocking summer because of the weather. As we know, it rained for a lot of the first part of the summer, but they were fairly keen to come back because they thought it would be worthwhile. But again, like you say, having the conversations about how it looks, making it just a bit tidier and tightening all that up. And that's the sort of thing that the team dealing with them can organise. And also there was a question about, somebody suggested that it was only 20,000 income. That wasn't correct. Any sort of costs such as electricity and all of that stuff, they paid on top of, we got the flat fee.
I mean, I'm sure they're happy with it because I'm sure they were charging a hefty amount to go around in a circle. But in terms of how the town appreciates it, if at this point and for the foreseeable we're not getting any, we're just part of the drop down of funds, I just think that it really needs to be discussed at planning properly again, because I don't think it's proved popular in any way like the ice rink has for the locals, in the sense that you might go with your family. I can't see anyone skipping down to pay 25 quid to go around in a circle and see castle, right? So it just needs to be thought through.
No, thank you for your comments, and we will certainly be listening if it comes to the panel again. Yes, on the lifts, Amy, I think you have an update.
So on lifts, I had I spoke with the centre manager for the Windsor Royal Centre. She let me know that the lift has had some problems. It's well past it. We're talking about the one that's in the centre, that's at the hotel end of the centre, near the steps that go up to the station. It's coming to the end of its life, so they're having to call engineers out to get it going again, but it is due to have a complete refit in the new year. So they're on that. They know it's ready for that. The other one, the Coach Park one, whenever that breaks down or seems to be out of order, it's usually because it's been overloaded, and then it stops, and then it has to be reset, and that seems to be going round in a loop. There was meant to be a fix that meant that the doors wouldn't close and it wouldn't operate if it was overloaded. That doesn't seem quite to be happening. So that's what I'm trying to chase up now. Did that fix actually take place? And if not, why not? And trying to resolve it. But again, it's an age issue there, and a lack of maintenance over a good number of years, unfortunately.
And we obviously, that came up only a day or two ago, so we put the questions to officers and waiting to hear back specifically on this occasion. I think what's important is that we actually come up with some kind of solution now, which means it doesn't keep failing, even if it's, I had a random idea of actually just putting some internal rails in to make the inside a bit smaller, just so that you can't get 12 people in there, you can only actually fit 6 or 8 people in or something like that. Not for me to problem solve, but it's we need an answer clearly, because having it shut on a regular basis, unpredictably, is not acceptable.
Chair, I was just going to add to that, just picking up on Councillor Cece's point. Yeah, when the lift was refurbished last year, that was one of the crucial things, was overloading. That's the number one issue as to why that lift breaks down. I don't know how many of you have been in the lift. It is not a big lift. It's not a big lift. And currently, I think when it was refurbished, we had a capacity of 13 people, which clearly was too high. That has been reduced to 8, and people are still overloading. How they get 8 people in there, I don't know. But it is happening. But it is one of the main issues, definitely, without question. And we have tried to signpost it. We've tried to, we've got signs inside, outside, trying to ensure that people know that when that lift is being used, the numbers of people that should be in it. Now, unfortunately, that's all in English. So, although I think the last group were Americans, so there's no reason for them not to have understood what those messages said. But we do get foreign visitors as well that may not necessarily fully understand what those messages are.
Thank you, Paul. As I say, if it's a signage issue, then maybe we just need to put some little rails inside to make it smaller so that people can't get in, or whatever. I don't know, but we definitely need a solution. Amy.
Paul, there was just some feedback that came back this week actually on that about alternative routes and having another look at the signage of where people are directed if the lift is out of order, and that there's an issue that one of the routes they're sent down is closed by the business, the Garden Cafe business. They are a key holder or something, so they close a gate when they close, and so it means people can't get through. And there was just maybe we'll pick it up afterwards, but it was just having a refresh and looking at the routes and making sure that the signage is very clear for people to get where they want to go.
So I think, Lawrence, if we can put an action for the next meeting, just have an update on the lift from potentially Chris Joyce, actually, because I think that's his area. Indeed. Sorry, Jim, on the bike store. I know the last time I spoke to officers about that was 2 weeks ago when it was on the point of being opened. I don't believe it's been opened yet. I have asked for signage to go up, so I chased that up again this afternoon for an update. I haven't received a reply yet, but obviously that's something that we're keen to get fixed and open and functioning.
Thank you again. I'm sure we're all disappointed that Chris Joyce has not been here for what was supposed to be the main event due to an IT issue, similar to what happens to British Airways, really, and the National Air Traffic Service occasionally. And I've not been a victim of those. I don't want to update you this much, but I don't know what his update was going to be. But I can say on the 30th of October this year, the London Borough of Hillingdon received and acknowledged Heathrow's application for the enabling works to take place for the easterly operations. To say it is extensive, and with my knowledge of planning, that is a monster of an application that was going in. It's over 100 separate pieces of work that's got to be done. The only work which is obviously contentious, because I was there at the last planning committee and the appeal, is the noise barrier that is needed alongside Longford Village. That is, looking at the moment of what I've seen, is a very weak and cheap noise barrier. And it's certainly not a blast screen for what is regarded a super heavy A380 winding up those engines and making a noise in that cul-de-sac down there. So I hope not, but the London Borough of Hillingdon will refuse this by probably mid next year. Then it will go to appeal, which will be another year, unless it's expedited by the Deputy Prime Minister, with great knowledge of airport operations, I'm sure. And then it will go on for about another 3 years before any work is undertaken.
Additionally, on the work, which is not included, is that they mark out that the London Borough of Hillingdon and the London Borough of Hounslow and Spelthorne are impacted by this planning. What they fail to mention is that the new parliamentary boundary for Windsor stretches as far as Horton and Hoyle within less than a mile. So there must be some representation from the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead to make their case for any objections or good wishes for the, as I did at the appeal session. The other thing is, this is the Windsor Town Forum, but Old Windsor Parish Council is going to be heavily impacted once the runways turn after 3 o'clock either way, whenever the thing is there. And they must be represented because, and also, Datchet to some respect, they're already impacted. Horton and Wraysbury will be as well. And they are only 3 miles from the touchdown point of the southern runway, when that's going to be in use for 8 hours, or from 4:30 in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We certainly need some definitive, and I regret to say, the assistant place manager may not be the person suitable for it. And I leave myself to explain that to you at a later time. But there's certainly a lot more information that needs to be answered by this planning application, including microwave landing systems where aircraft are going to reach the point of Windsor, which is 6 miles out, and they will be coming from different directions, curving in to speed up the capacity for landings. And that's going to impact the whole of Windsor, all the way up to St Leonard's Hill, Cleur, and everywhere like that. I've got more to say, but I don't want to borrow. But if you please insert the easterly operations in the next meeting, otherwise you're going to start losing ground on it and losing the opportunity to make any observations on the changes of the runway, which was approved last time, but cancelled by Heathrow because they wanted to not spend any work because they were going ahead with the third runway, which needs to be connected to the easterly operation that is being sought today.
Thank you for your comments. Amy.
Thank you, John. That's very useful. And it's disappointing that Chris couldn't stay, but I know he had some other commitments. I think this was an item on the last aviation forum meeting, which was held on the 16th of October, and the minutes are available online, and it does sort of give, there is a presentation and things on there. So if anybody did want to kind of read a summary in advance of him coming again, it is on there, and he's just gives an explanation of what that item is about. So it's, and there is a link to those minutes on this agenda if anybody wants to. The next meeting isn't actually on here yet, so presumably that's being set. Do you know, Lawrence?
So yeah, the idea of the aviation forum is that the meetings will be scheduled in close proximity to the meetings of Keisha, or the Council for the Independent Scrutiny of Heathrow Airport. As of today, Keisha have not publish the dates of their future meetings, so hence there's no aviation forum meetings have not been scheduled in yet. But there will be another meeting. It's just when Keisha submits their dates, we'll schedule one in.
Thank you, and thank you for those points. And I think it will be very worthwhile taking those up with the aviation forum and RBWM generally. I'm not sure we can obviously have Chris report back here, but as you say, there's probably something else that needs to happen beyond that, or several steps that need to happen. Thank you.
So it's just really quick, just because the meeting thing just rang a bell for me. Is the Windsor town meeting changing from monthly to every other month? I'm sure I saw some dates, and it seemed to have drifted into happening over a longer period of time rather than.
I think it is typically every other month.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Has it always been every other month?
Yeah.
I'm just going bonkers then. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Nigel Griffin, a resident. I'm sure everybody's aware that there's been quite a lot of talk in the press about tourist tax nationally. In one country, Wales, looks like it's pushing ahead with it. Could you reassure us that there's a team in Windsor beavering away to look at the opportunities that a tourist tax might bring us? And it's just not the tax. It needs very careful thinking through, about where the benefits of the tourist tax, will there be benefits? How will those benefits be exercised? It's perhaps an opportunity for us to correct the rotten finances we have to some degree. Perhaps it's an opportunity to help some of our volunteers with all the projects they're doing. Please reassure us that the key people in Windsor and Maidenhead are working hard to look at the opportunities that tourist tax might benefit.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel. I can certainly answer that. So in the recently published financial improvement and sustainability plan, there is a reference to the council exploring a business improvement district, which is effectively the mechanism by which we could potentially action something like that for Windsor and indeed also Maidenhead and Ascot. So that is very much part of the recovery plan. There is a team coming together to be looking at that in great detail. Yeah, it's already started. I'm not sure. No, it's a core part of the recovery plan. So there will be specific timetables. It will be more specific because it is part of effectively what we're putting to national government in terms of the negotiations for financial support, and the national government will need to see actions on it, which is slightly different to the Windsor Vision, which is a separate project. So yes, it is in the documents, and they will be reported on going forward, and that is very much something we're now starting to look at. It will be reported on through the wider periodic reporting. Yeah, we can put it. Yeah, we can certainly bring an update here as appropriate. Yeah. Yes, Teresa.
Can I just ask whether or not any monitoring is done on the site of the ice rink, on the where they're putting their vehicles, where they're putting everything else, because they seem to be using the tree root areas to put really heavy equipment. It has been reported to enforcement, and they have asked them to move things, but I am really concerned that it won't show up straight away. So it won't be this year that when they take it all down, there'll be damage to the trees, or they won't die instantly. But this constant going over the root protection areas of the trees there will have a detrimental effect, and they will end up losing those trees there. There seems to be an awful lot of extra barriers round more, and I don't remember all the planning applications seeing tree barriers, where they're supposed to put it round a tree so that nobody puts anything on it, nobody goes on it with vehicles. So there's an awful lot of it seems to have moved slightly in the gardens as well. It doesn't seem to be quite in the position it was marked on. So there's an awful lot there in terms of damage that could be done. And it's okay, we're going to end up relaying the turf, but you can't take a tree up and put a new one there of the size that they are. And I'm really concerned. It was one of the things we complained about or commented on about having lack of use of the park and everything else, and the damage it would do. And so I'm really concerned that it seems to be have happened more than it should have done.
Okay, no, thank you for raising that. That's something we can very much look into. And I'm very well aware that if you compress the soil around tree roots, it damages the trees. We do have a tree specialist in the officer rank, so we'll get somebody to look at that. Thank you.
John Holland, resident. Councillor TC referred earlier to the fact that there was no budget, which perhaps draws attention to the elephant in this room. That is that the council is teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. The CIPRA report identified lots of governance failings and a lack of financial control. The external auditor's report found evidence of basic accounting errors. At the Cabinet meeting on the 30th of October, you asked Councillor Wilson if there was any mechanism to hold anyone to account. At the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny panel, Councillor Price asked, is there anything that could be done to call the responsible parties to account? And a resident, Andrew Hill, suggested that people should be held accountable. As a resident, I would like to add my voice to those calls for accountability. We haven't had an answer to those important questions. And I'm not sure what the answer is, but perhaps the legal officer who comes to this meeting will give us an explanation as to, is there any accountability in local government? If it was national government, I think responsible parties would have come before a committee and be grilled as to what happened, why it happened, and what the lessons learned are. In private sector, I know that heads would have rolled. I mean, in local government, they just skip off into the sunset. But we are in a catastrophic position, and all the things that we've been speaking about require resource. Council is under-resourced, despite all the problems that we have, and we don't know if we're going to go for Section 114 or not. But I don't think the people are responsible to just walk away from this. So can we have an answer to the questions that councillors and residents are asking, please?
Yes, thank you for your question. Very, very well put. This is, yeah, we can ask for a effectively written reply. This is something that we've been discussing at some length. It is quite challenging to kind of get enough evidence for a particular point or a particular person at any in order to kind of have any further accountability than that which there has been. And there's obviously a degree of accountability at the ballot box, you know, which we've seen, and certainly we have a new senior officer cohort in the council who are you know, who are bringing a fresh approach. But yeah, I think a lot of people feel, you've expressed the views of a lot of people that I've spoken to, and personally, it would be I think it would be good to get some clarity over what we can and can't do. As I say, we've had some discussions, we've got some indications. It is quite difficult, but we can get a kind of a formal response on that. Thank you. Are any other points anybody would wish to raise?
May I ask a question? And I see Councillor Davies is here. Is there any progress happening with the Windsor Town Council area at all? Because it's been very quiet over the last months or year. Just interested to understand the state of play, whether it's going ahead, not going ahead, or what the plan is. Thank you.
Yeah, I was actually not there to give the reply myself, but I did give an update in writing in response to a question at full council at the end of September. Essentially, as part of the whole financial problems that we've inherited, the council doesn't have the resources at the present time to conduct a community governance review. because one of the problems that we have is that the officer corps was cut. Was a great lack of capacity in the team, and it would require external capacity, extra project management capacity, people to be employed in order to do it, which and also a lot of work from a lot of officers across not just democratic services, but also across the place team, because obviously the sort of services that typically parish and town councils take over from boroughs are all in the place directorate. So with sort of cemeteries, allotments, some parks, it's all in that directorate. And at this time, unfortunately, and obviously I'm very disappointed because this is something that I wanted to start, having the disappointment of it being turned down once before. It was something that I wanted to start straight away. But yeah, unfortunately, we're having to wait until we've got this finance, sort of all hands on deck to deal with the finances at the moment. But we'll give an update as soon as there's any sort of progress, and if anyone's got any magic wands to wave to speed the finances on their way and enable us to get started more quickly, then that would be great.
Thank you for the update. It's disappointing for some people I know within the town, across the town, that we'd like to have seen it before, but we are where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further points from the room?
I'm going to say one last positive thing, if I could.
Mm-hmm.
There was a note put on Facebook somewhere saying that a lot of the royal events are being transferred to Windsor from Buckingham Palace and so on and so forth. So, I mean, obviously one assumes that's good for the local community, certainly the town centre community in terms of footfall and so on. But I was hoping that maybe in the coming meetings we might have some schedule of when those events are happening and what events Windsor might itself put on to entwine themselves with the event. If there's going to be a market, it would make sense probably to have a market when it's full of tourists anyway, you know, that kind of stuff. So it might be worth just looking at the next year and seeing where we can put those two things together. That makes sense.
Yes, thank you. I think as far as what I'm aware of is that the continuing works at Buckingham Palace mean that investitures take place here, and that's largely why the castle is closed Tuesday and Wednesday. Because the castle's then closed, there's then a reduction in tourists, so it's actually negative to footfall in the town centre, unfortunately. And I know there are also kind of obviously security issues around putting particular events, depends what it is, but any kind of state visit would obviously not be given a huge amount of sort of foreshadowing. But it's a good point about, is there anything we can do to kind of to work closer together? I mean, we do have a good relationship with the castle through the Windsor and Eton Business Partnership. Yeah, obviously Paul does a lot of collaboration as well. So yeah, there will be limits, but it would be, yeah, we can certainly explore what we can do.
Well, I tried.
Thank you. Good. Yeah, good thinking. Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, thank you very much for attending. The next meeting is the 19th of January. And as always, feel free to send emails to either myself or Amy with any points about the forum. Thank you.